and made art and played and learned new ways of being and stopped and listened deeper. Someone meditated, someone prayed, someone danced, someone met their shadow, and people began to think differently, and people healed. And in the absence of people who lived in ignorant ways, dangerous, meaningless, and heartless, even the earth began to heal. And when the danger ended, and people found each other, grieved for the dead, and they made new choices and dreamt of new visions and created new ways of life and healed the earth completely, just as they were healed themselves. Words by Kathleen O'Meara. The subtitle is A Famine Poem, and it was written in 1869 during one of the Irish famines of the 19th century. I light this chalice with some difficulties to mark our transition from day-to-day living to worship mode, and a great welcome to all the people who somehow will receive this service, but especially to the good people in Newcastle, because it is predominantly their service. May it be something which they find interesting, entertaining, and thought-provoking. At least one of them would be good. And my first reading are words by Max Ehrmann. Let me do my work each day, and if the darkened hours of despair overcome me, may I not forget the strength that had comforted me in the desolation of other times. May I still remember the bright hours that found me walking over the silent hills of my childhood, or dreaming on the margin of a quiet river, when a light glowed within me, and I promised my early God to have courage amidst the tempest of the changing years. Spare me from bitterness and from the sharp passions of unguarded moments. May I not forget that may I not forget that poverty and riches are of the spirit. Though the world knows me not, may my thoughts and action be such as shall keep me friendly with myself. Lift up my eyes from the earth, and let me not forget the uses of the stars. Forbid that I should judge others, lest I condemn myself. Let me not follow the clamour of the world, but walk calmly in my path. Give me a few friends who will love me for what I am, and keep ever burning for my vacant steps the kindly light of hope. And thou, age and infirmity overtake me, and I come not within sight of the castle of my dreams. Teach me still to be thankful for life, and for times old and memories that are good and sweet, and may the evening's twilight find me gentle still. Words by Max Ehrmann.
Good morning, Newcastle. The poem prayer by Max Ehrman was chosen to begin this service because that phrase, the castle of my dreams, reminded me of Newcastle, which, as I am sure you all know, is so called because a castle was built there by Robert Curthose, the eldest son of William the Conqueror, a wooden castle in the year 1080, replaced by a stone castle 7 years later. It was quite literally a new castle. And I thought of that because Brigitte used the phrase castles in the air in some of the worship material she has recently produced. And she used the phrase to be both critical of the false promises of religion and at the same time to express appreciation of the imaginative power of religion. The only real problem I would have with the projection of castles in the air as a deferred promise would be if it were used as an excuse not to provide decent housing on the ground. The phrase castles in the air does not appear anywhere in the Bible. The nearest we get to it is when Jesus says, "My Father's house has many mansions." And I have always taken that to mean that there is plenty of room and everyone is invited, i.e., there is no discrimination in the kingdom of heaven. Yet, the imaginary castles in the air that religion, in its more corrupt, complacent, or foolish moments, has a tendency to waffle on about, can be a dangerous distraction from the real work of building justice here on earth, but even more dangerous and even more misleading than the imaginary castles in the air of religion are the imaginary dungeons in the soul of materialism. The pretense that human life has no meaning other than that which can be explained by material causes, and that there is no satisfaction to be found in human life that is not dependent upon material circumstances. The crisis caused by the current pandemic is alarming and even terrifying, and I would not seek to minimize it. But the kindness, the compassion, and the creativity that so many have responded to the crisis with is magnificent. And I do not think that would be possible if we really were, as some of the more unforgiving apostles of materialism have suggested, nothing more than the aggregate of our appetites and anxieties. I do not much care at this point what meaning you would prefer to give to the word God, or whether you wish to use the word as a noun, as a verb, or, as I frequently like to do, as a question mark. For I am going to use the word to say that we are more than the children of our needs and greeds. We are the children of our loves and dreams. We are the children of God.
This is a poem of my own, Castles in the Air. Look up to the sky, marvel at the brilliant blue. See some tufty clouds sailing by. Let your mind go. Start to dream while you can. Of times when you felt free to move, to laugh, to dance, not just in your living room, but in the streets with hundreds of other people. Look at the sky, see rainbows, real or imaginary. Remember, they are symbols of hope, a hope which we all have difficulties to hold on to. Now, when your hopes seem as far away as the clouds or the stars in the sky, it is important to take heed that we live under one sky and share one earth. And our dreams are not so different either. And one of the most painful things for me personally is looking at empty streets. Not that I haven't complained beforehand when the streets were too full. And I remember the poem by the German author Ludwig Fels, which dates back quite some time, but I think has some bearings on my grief over empty streets. Ludwig Fels, finally, these are not the times in which we can live. Try to change. Do not listen when the men speak about their victories on the battlefields and in the bedrooms. That is nothing for you, not done for you, nor planned with you in mind. Try to remember. Listen when the radio reports death and murders, which won't be the last. Don't cry because of the empty streets. They are real, like your fear. While you're eating in order to gather strength and drinking in order to sleep better. A dystopian poem from the 1970s. Prophecy? It is up to you to decide.
Well, this is me hard at work and thinking about the significance of the work I have been doing for the past 20 years. There is an apparent culture among some preachers, not only Unitarians, that because we no longer believe we can speak with absolute certainty about ultimate things like God, good and evil, life, death, the universe and everything, that we should not speak of them at all. That the job of the preacher is to comfort or to entertain, perhaps with a sprinkle of learning or an occasional uplifting story, and that the ultimate subject of what may lie beyond their endings and beginnings, being ultimately unknowable, is best left untouched. I am not of that opinion. I am aware that in every Unitarian congregation there may be people listening who will have heard the word God used so loosely and abused so foolishly that they would rather not hear it again. I am equally aware that in every Unitarian congregation there may be people listening who are waiting and hoping and maybe even praying that one day someone will come along who will actually dare to try to say something fresh on the subject of God. And while I understand and respect the feelings of those who are not comfortable using the word God and do not choose to use it, I do not accept that a rational person could be honestly offended if someone else chooses to use it. I feel that if anyone is offended by my use of the word God, then it is probably because they quite enjoy being offended. But if I am wrong, then I want to be offended too. If you are offended by my use of the word God, then I am offended by your use of the word. And I want to argue that it represents a failure to understand the history of humanity's ideas of the sacred. And it also represents a complete failure to understand what language is and how it works. For it was never about which words are false and which words are true, about which words refer to something real and which words refer to something imaginary. It was always about who has the power to impose their definitions on everyone else. From the days of Henry VIII and the medieval popes up to the militant atheists of today, it was always about who serves the dominant culture and who challenges it, about who uses the word God oppressively and who uses it progressively. I am of the opinion that it's almost 200 years since the word God could be plausibly portrayed as the exclusive property of the ruling class, of the dominant culture. Look at the history of the blues, of gospel music, and see how the slaves took the word God away from the masters and made it their own. Brigitte is now going to read something by an African American Unitarian of the 19th century who was born a slave and became a poet.
Songs for the people. Let me make the songs for the people. Songs for the old and young. Songs to stir like a battle cry wherever they are sung. Not for the clashing of sabres, for carnage nor for strife, but songs to thrill the hearts of men with more abundant life. Let me make the songs for the weary, amid life's fever and fret, till hearts shall relax their tension, and careworn brows forget. Let me sing for little children, before their footsteps stray, sweet anthems of love and duty, to float over life's highway. I would sing for the poor and ages, when shadows dim their sight of the bright and restful mansions, where there shall be no night. Our world, so worn and weary, needs music pure and strong, to hush the jangle and discords of sorrow, pain, and wrong. Music to soothe all its sorrow, till war and crime shall cease, and the hearts of men grown tender girdle the world with peace. Word by Frances Ellen Watkins Harper.
I officially retired at the beginning of this month, and although I continue to conduct worship one Sunday a month and do work one day a week, work for me ceased to be a necessity and became a choice. And I have been thinking about the implications of that choice and the meaning of that word work. There are the most basic meanings of the word, of which the most common meaning, that of paid employment, is not the most significant, and my preferred definition of work as purposeful activity or productive activity are both more meaningful and more universal. And there is, of course, the meaning of the word work as a verb, as used of a piece of machinery or a technique. If something works, it means it does what it is supposed to do. It works. And if something doesn't work, it is either worn out or broken and in need of repair. It is the social and historical significance of that word work that fascinates me most. And that of all the various states and civilizations throughout the human history that have had very different attitudes towards the value of work and those who do it. In many periods and places, including the relatively recent past of our own country, those who did not work, who could afford not to work, were looked up to as superior, and those who had to work were looked down upon as inferior. Imagine what state we'd be in today with all the nurses and doctors, the postmen, the binmen, and everyone else who keeps the country going. Imagine what state we'd be in if they got no respect. Well, that was the situation for centuries, and it wasn't all that long ago that it began to change. And among the assumptions underlying that argument is one that is particularly ridiculous and always has been, which is that if you are a worker, you cannot be cultured. What nonsense. Ever since the invention of public libraries, everyone has had the opportunity to become cultured. With the advent of the Elementary Education Act in 1870, every child between the age of 5 and 12 had the opportunity to be taught to read. An enormous rise in rates of literacy followed, and an absolute explosion in popular culture at every level. If you are curious about history, civilization, art, and ideas, then you can become cultured. If you can read, you can be cultured. And if you have time to go down the pub, you have time to read. And if it comes to it, you can go down the pub and take a book with you. That remark is not as flippant as it might sound. An industrial survey in Scotland in 1901 found that in the town of Motherwell, where I grew up, the miners' reading rooms, where newspapers, magazines and publications and periodicals of all kinds were freely available, along with countless books, were actually more popular than the pub and more frequented. Now, doesn't that deflate a cliche? Especially among the younger miners. They were not going down the pub, getting drunk and coming home and beating their wives. They were in the reading room, reading newspapers, periodicals and books, and coming home and reading stories to the kids. To say that a worker is not a reader is every bit as absurd as it would be to say that a reader is not a worker. For here I am, able to announce that when this lockdown is over, and in a couple of years, when I wind up my current commitments and stop working fully, there is no chance that I will ever get bored. I just have to think about all the books I haven't read yet. Thank you.
Now, soon I will extinguish the chalice, and then we all will go to our various hidey holes called houses and homes, to an unknown future, even more unknown than normally. The only thing we will know that we will return to lives which have been turned upside down. Now, if you're a believer or a non-believer, if you're a humanist or a theist, to me that doesn't matter. And I am a humanist who has actually some idea of God, but then what I would define God, I keep quite private. But what this pandemic has brought to the forefront, and what I think we have to be watchful, is people who come with a very outdated version of God. This is not a punishment from God. It is something gone wrong in the mechanisms of nature. And if I hear once more or see it on my newsfeed that God will save the good ones and destroys the wrong ones. I don't know what I will do to my smartphone. I hope I won't throw it in the furthest corner of the room, because, as everybody knows, a smartphone in this day is a lifeline. So be wary. They might have not come to the forefront, but there are people who are of a dangerous persuasion. The ignorant ones from the famine poem, which we had in this service, they do exist. And they're not only called Trump, but he goes into that category. And they will exploit that. If you have a faith, then stand in the way of that, whichever way you can. At the moment, we only have modern media to serve that purpose. But be safe in the knowledge that whatever happens, you don't have to lose your belief, which you might have had beforehand over it. You might even, with all the kindness resurging in people, increase your belief. The belief in the good of people is a belief which stands against idiots who say, let the weak die. The carpenter prophet didn't want that. No Unitarian would want that. No good person would want that. So all you good people, stay safe, healthy, and be in as good spirits as you can be. May your God, if you have one, help you with that. Amen.